This last weekend, Dortmund, Germany hosted the 2025 Sim Racing Expo, an event to meet drivers and creators and, of course, check out a ton of new sim racing games and hardware. It's an event I've wanted to go to ever since I got into sim racing, and this year, RENNSPORT and Nacon Racing gave me that opportunity by flying me all the way out to Germany to compete in an event with some of the biggest names in both sim and real racing in the RENNSPORT Creator Cup. Now, I've actually done a handful of these virtually already. If you follow me on Twitch or subscribe to my second channel, you'll have seen the handful of other Creator Cups I've competed in from home, and they've always been super fun races, you know, just that right mix of casual and fun while also still being competitive. Fast Miner and Gamer Muscle have been in a handful of these. Race Boy was just in the last one. If you play Forza, I'm sure you probably know that name. But for this in-person event, they pulled out all the stops and got some of the fastest drivers you could think of, like Steve or Super GT, who has lately been absolutely killing it at the Nürburgring, Daniel Morad, a 2x Rolex 24-hour winner at Daytona, and Jann Mardenborough, you know, the OG sim racer turned real driver that they made a whole movie about. So needless to say, I went into this event with the mentality of being like the normal guy they hire to run next to the Olympians so that you can have a better perspective of just how impressive the Olympians actually are. That said, I arrived at the expo early Friday morning and was able to finally check out the RENNSPORT booth and get some proper practice for the GT3 race at Spa later that day. And I do want to talk about the expo as a whole soon, but just to show off the RENNSPORT booth for now, they had 9 PC rigs in this big circle all set up with different cars that were super easy to jump into, and 2 more off to the side for Xbox and PlayStation. And we'll get to that later because I did check out the game on a Series X. They also had a sick car there, this Alpha 155 V6 that will be coming to the game as part of a DLC later. So props to them for getting that booth set up so well. It was among the easiest to watch and get some seat time on at the expo. With that though, we gotta talk about these races. After spending some time checking out the expo, squeezing in a bit of practice at the booth, and then meeting most of the guys I'd be racing with, when it came time for qualifying on the first race, which was a one-shot quali with only 3 minutes of practice session beforehand, I somehow landed a P3 spot on the starting grid for race 1, behind, of course, Jann and Dan. Now, my absolute biggest fear for this event was flying all this way to immediately cause a crash in turn 1, so I played this start very conservatively and did end up dropping 2 positions out of the gate, bringing me down to P5, which I was totally okay with. I just did not want to make a fool of myself right away, and as things started to settle out in lap 1, I was feeling pretty good. Super GT, who had spun in quali, putting him towards the back, was shooting his way up from the bottom of the pack though, and caught me coming into the chicane. My sorrow was short-lived, however, as coming out of that very same chicane, Steve spun and I got back my P5. It was a very eventful first lap, but with that first one down and everyone starting to get some space, I was feeling much better that I didn't make a fool of myself right out of the gate. I had joked to my wife before leaving that I was gonna somehow end up ramming Jann and ruining his race, but that hadn't happened. Yet. As I came up out of Eau Rouge and Radeon, I could hear the announcers talking about the battle at the front between Jann and Dan, and as I came up to Lecombe, it sounded like there was a big incident. I saw a Porsche spun around on the outside of the track and watched as P3 and P4 shot up the inside around him, so I set my line to the inside as well, just as the Porsche started pulling around to rejoin, and I slammed right into the side of Jann Mardenborough, fulfilling the prophecy I had laid out for myself. But the race wasn't over yet. I got back on track, it was only lap 2, and somehow because of all the carnage and slowdowns, I had only dropped 1 position. Jann shot back to the front, and over the next lap, I just tried to shake off the nerves and get back into the race. I was slowly gaining on Rene from overtake in the BMW, and coming into lap 4, he had a bit of a struggle out of the chicane, and I was able to secure the pass on turn 1 of lap 4. P4, and then managed to hold P5 to the finish of race 1. And honestly, I was so happy with that result. I had told some of the guys I was just hoping to not get last, and I succeeded at that, finishing pretty squarely in the middle of the pack, even after a pretty rough incident. But it wasn't time to celebrate yet, because the call rang out for the second race. I was feeling a bit better about my pace on this one. I had been struggling to match my normal times at home on my own rig, but we kinda all were. It's hard to get used to completely different hardware in such a short period of time, so I knew I could still qualify around the middle of the pack. That is, if I didn't spin, which I did. And this being a one-shot qualifier meant that I was starting race 2 at the very back of the pack, baby. Nowhere to go but up. And I did secure a position right away on turn 1, and then Daniel Morad went off track as well, which put me right into the pack at P7. And then again, coming out of Lacombe in lap 1, there was another incident causing one of the AMGs to go off right in front of me, bringing me up to P6. But then I ended up missing my apex and running wide, which brought none other than Daniel Morad up by my side, pushing me back to 7th. Then just a bit further into lap 1, as I trailed Dan, he went for a pass and went off track again, putting me ahead of him once more back into P6. I spent the next few laps yet again shaking off the chaos of lap 1 and slowly closing in on Kirith, while Daniel Morad slowly closed in on me yet again. The final 2 laps had me and Kirith battling back and forth in a great fight that I managed to pull ahead on in the very last lap to secure a P6 finish in race number 2. I had come to this event expecting to be completely outclassed by the incredibly high caliber of drivers I was up against, and even though I didn't get any podiums and finished mid-pack both times, I held my own. I wasn't just putzing around on the same track as these guys, I was actually racing with them. I may have had some mess ups, but we all did, and at the end of the day, we were all still friendly and laughing about it, and I walked away from those races absolutely beaming. So again, shout out to RENNSPORT and Nacon for putting on such a fun event and inviting me out. Shout out to Steve for offering me some of his pizza. Shout out to Jann for absolving me of my guilt for crashing into him. We chatted about it after the race and cleared the air. And huge shout out to Daniel Morad, who was next to me during the races and was an incredibly kind person to chat with. He ended up giving me a pair of his new Moradness gloves for the race and let me keep them. They're super nice and they kind of sold me on using gloves more for sim racing, so you might keep seeing these on the channel. That said, I do want to close out by talking about the rest of the expo and a bit more about RENNSPORT itself, because I also got to try the game on console. RENNSPORT releases into 1.0 on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation November 13th, with crossplay between all platforms. This is awesome for console folks because full sim experiences are pretty few and far between on both Xbox and PS5. So bringing RENNSPORT onto everything with crossplay is a great move. The game does play shockingly well on a controller. I know Fastminer and Raceboy can also attest to that, so don't feel left out at all if you just have a gamepad. But I did play on a RevoSim wheel and pedals at the Expo myself. You're watching some Series X footage here, and most importantly, the game ran buttery smooth at 60 FPS for me, with a competitive racing game that is critical. And yeah, the game still manages to look solid and run very well too. The UI is clean and easy to navigate and translates really well to Xbox controls. That's already stuff I liked about the PC version, so not much of a surprise, but still nice to see. And overall, I'm just excited for console players to not get left out of this one. This isn't like a simcade or a light sim or whatever you want to call it. This is a full-bodied sim racing game for console that can play online right alongside PC, and that's exciting. And speaking of exciting, finally, I do just want to mention how amazing the Sim Racing Expo was as a whole. I was only able to be there one day, but I was there the whole day for like 8+ hours, and I could have easily gotten another day or two out of the event. It was super easy to get a feel for all sorts of different hardware. You could be hands-on with tons of wheels, pedals, shifters, handbrakes, and whatever else. There were a handful of really cool motion sims and even some VR setups and just so much stuff for you to try. I very seriously would recommend it to anyone into sim racing, because even for me, as someone who has used a lot of equipment equipment, it was still so good to give me a perspective and quick comparison to figure out what I actually like, what's more or less important for me in a sim setup, what fits within my own budget, and of course, what new stuff is coming out that I didn't know about or had only heard of. Everyone I talked to at the booths was incredibly nice and super knowledgeable about their products. Like, you could tell everyone was an enthusiast, not just a salesman. Like, at every booth, we were all just talking sim racer to sim racer, and it was super refreshing and just rewarding to be a part of. It was an absolutely wonderful time. So yet again, thank you so much to RENNSPORT and Nacon Racing for bringing me out to the expo and having me compete in the Creator Cup. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.